Hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast for the recently deceased. I'm Nate Roberts.
I am Rodney Godek. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, and it was a insane week. Um, our picks, although not directly related, were super heavy, super philosophical, theology, based in religion. the
Oh, sure. Uh,
um,
there's a lot of subtext, a lot of intent by two filmmakers that are clearly have a vision and a story to tell or an experience to provide, and they're going to utilize everything at their disposal to do that, to tell it. And they were two very diametrically opposed movies or experiences,
right.
and I'm excited to talk about them.
Yeah, yeah. One movie about death and destruction. The other one about rebirth. I guess you could say that Mad God had a little rebirth in it too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
uh,
definitely. Well, so I mean, the thing about it, watching both of these, for me, these were both amazing films. I loved both of these.
oh
I
yeah,
would recommend for people that are getting into this to the stream or watching this on the tubes later that these are for me. These are both recommendations. What about for you?
oh absolutely. Uh, yeah, definitely must watch movies. Even if you're not into the genre, like
Yeah.
especially men, it dabbles in horror, in some, it gives you some suspense here and there. There's the chase, there's a couple sequences and a little bit of gore, but the gore isn't even like your typical horror gore. Like it's a lot more thematic. It's a lot more representative of the concept of the film, and not quite so much just slaughtering people. Like
Yeah, well,
like
I mean, I could see I believe I've seen reviews and I can imagine that these are both films that there will be certain moviegoers that these are definitely not for. That will
sure.
walk out of both of these movies.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Mad God. The visuals in Mad God. Yeah. Unless you're ready for some shock. Um, he does some crazy. I've seen some of the craziest things I've ever seen in Mad
Yeah.
God.
I was thinking if I had had Mad God at my disposal in grad school, things might have been different. I mean, I was super into dioramas and stop motion. I was remaking the board games, the Fireball Island. I was hand carving one. I was
Mhm.
shooting visuals of the island with a shitty digital camera, and I would just
Sure.
stop motion, like rotate it on the table, and then I would have like a pink light on it, and then I would put a grid on it, and I was just doing frames so that I could do a little visual of it like spinning, like you would see as a three-dimensional model in like PlayStation One's Final Fantasy VIII, where they're showing you a model of the goddamn city that you're about to infiltrate. Like I
Sure.
was just doing dumb visuals, and it had no purpose really. It was just this is cool as shit to me. It's fun. It's a different way to interact with something familiar or a different way to present something familiar. It was unnecessary. It was superfluous. It had no real importance. And, it's crazy whenever you watch Mad God, or at least for me. And I think back at the time, there was so much going on in that movie that would have informed what I was doing in grad school in a very positive way. Because a lot of what the guy Phil Tippett, who we'll get into, does Mad God. Um, it's like he's working through things himself, and it's not necessarily from point A to point B. It's just like, here's what I'm doing or thinking or feeling or want to express. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just I got to get this out of my system. And so, man, it would have been really sweet to have had that. Shit. How long ago was that at this point? Almost 20 years ago? Shit.
Yeah, I feel that way almost every time I see an A24 movie or when we watch the Jeremy Gardner movies. I was like, man, I could have made one of these on like no budget in my
Yeah.
town, and like I was so like in my late teens, early 20s, I was so into filmmaking and screenwriting, and I've got stacks of shit no one but me is ever gonna read, and and
Yeah.
yeah, I feel the same way. How like there's like back then, there was no. I mean, I'm sure there would have been an appreciation for it, but it didn't really exist the way the low budget art house horror kind of exists now.
Yeah.
Back then it was either slashers or it was those all the A-listers at the time, all the teen A-listers at the time, or I should say 20-year-olds playing teens, like Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Fear, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So if it wasn't that, it was your Freddy sequel or your Nightmare or your Friday sequel or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's so nice to now have things like Shutter and companies like A24, pumping out really really great content that not necessarily cost a lot of money. Um,
Well, and that brings up a good point because Age 24 specifically, they make or they help bring to the world a lot of unique f- takes on filmmaking as an art form and stories and storytelling. And most notably, um recently, I suppose, well, shit, it's just been a couple. But I mean, okay, so X, I think, probably had some cachet to
sure.
hit a mainstream audience because it has a slasher base, but it's like art house slasher, you know?
Yeah, well, it
um,
was it was also like X's kind of first like not really elevated horror. It was like their first kind of like, hey, we can
right,
make slashers too.
right, but it was also like couched in like there's a guy that knows exactly what the fuck he's doing and how to tell story and how to intentionally do things a certain way. Like all of the X is kind of straightforward, but all of the foreshadowing that's not overt, that's just hidden in the background, or the dialogue that happens with the characters that then comes to pass later on, it's subverting your expectations. It's done so smartly
Yeah,
that I guess that's the most standout that like you could see it having some appeal, and I think it did. But the only other one that has had like big appeal that didn't cost maybe a ton would be Everything Everywhere All at Once. Not horror, obviously, not for our channel, but they produce a lot of content that is not going to make money. And it's a
right.
scary time because you want the studio to exist and you know that the fan base is there for them. They've developed that, excuse me, already. And they're not going to go anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to see A24 releases as soon as we possibly can. But I'm still concerned because at some point they need money. They gotta, and I'm just wondering where their profit loss statements are with some of the films that they produce because you know that they're like Mad God is beautiful and it's awesome. Is Mad God? No, Mad God's IFC Midnight,
Yeah,
but um, Men is an
yeah.
A24 though,
Man is
and
A24.
so
Yep.
it's let's see, box office gross 7 mil. I don't know what it costs to make it, but I can't imagine them making a ton of money off it. And so I'm just hoping that the people that are into film continue to see film. Like you were saying when we were growing up, there's a different kind of feeling about film. We still had blockbusters. we still had the experience of having to go in a theater or then go see it whenever it fucking new released, and you better hope that your VHS was behind the box art because you might not be able to rent that because everyone fucking rented that release
Yeah.
when it came out. You
And
remember that?
my local video store only had one copy of everything. So it was like, how am I going to get to see this movie? And
Yeah.
sometimes I had to wait another week or 2 weeks that it had been out if it wasn't one that I was automatically going to buy. Um,
It was such a different time, and now, because everything is just so available and there's so much more of it, it's such a flooded market, so to speak. I'm cautiously optimistic that good things will continue to get made, but I feel like it's still going to be narrowed and narrowed and narrowed because, especially whenever you look around at the kind of bullshit that people consume, Top Gun is number one. And, before that, Doctor Strange and these big blockbuster bullshit movies that we've seen a million times can really drown out the beautiful different stories that I want to be looking
yeah.
at and getting.
Yeah,
So,
if you went and saw Top Gun or Doctor Strange and haven't seen Everything Everywhere, you should have spent your money on Everything Everywhere, and shame on you. And
yeah.
go see it if you still can before it gets out of theaters.
Yeah, Everything Everywhere just had a home stream event, I think last night, where
Oh,
you
nice.
could dial in and buy a ticket to stream it with like the country. I think they had like a dialing code that you could watch it all together.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, the movie was phenomenal, and the fact that it's getting overshadowed by Doctor Strange and a fucking Tom Cruise movie, who has been like the bane of Hollywood's existence since he was since after so the first film he made after Legend, whatever the hell that was.
I mean, I still love Tom Cruise movies. I do.
I
I
can't.
like
I
him as an
can't.
actor.
I can't do
Y-
it.
You
I
know?
can't. No, never. I Legend. I think he was like 16, so like I forgive him. It's got Mia Sara, Tim Curry. It's fantasy, right? So that's easy to forgive too. Um, but like you get into his 80s movies, I'll take I'll take James Spader, uh, Eric Stoltz. I'll take any one of them over Tom. John Cusack. John Cusack all day over Tom Cruise.
You make it sound like you're saying like that the way that you're proposing John Cusack and Tom Cruise are like pick the lesser of the two evils. It's the way. Is that what you're saying? Like you're not a big John Cusack fan, but you would definitely watch John Cusack before Tom Cruise?
I mean, I am a big John Cusack fan,
Okay,
but
you
I'm
are.
saying that I would definitely, there were so many icons in the '80s, with the Brat Pack. I like every single one of them was a
Hmm.
great actor back then, and probably still is now if they're doing things. Poor Joe Nelson. Um,
Yeah. So, quick sidebar before we continue. You mentioned Brad Pack, and it just triggered, and we're talking about the '80s in a lot of ways. Have you been keeping up with Stranger Things?
so Stranger Things, every episode's about an hour and 20.
Yeah.
So an hour and 20 on my treadmill while walking is like exactly my workout. So I've been watching one episode a day, or a day that I work out. So I skip a day every once in a while. So I
Hmm.
just finished episode either 4 or 5. Um, so I'm getting there. I'll probably watch episode 6 tomorrow morning.
Okay. I'm trying to. Yeah. So I've been watching it. There's a character coming up that like it's like this is what's her name from Breakfast Club's it Ali Sheehan?
Ali Sheedy, that would be
Sheedy, Ali Sheedy.
the weirdo.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
weirdo.
And
Yeah.
it's like you're doing an Ali Sheedy impression or you're dressed like Ali Sheedy. It's very intentional. Like it's kind of fun, but it's like okay, like you don't have to rip everything off the
Yeah.
80s. Like
Yeah.
you could do your own thing, which they do. Music's obviously great in this one. I don't know if you got to the thing, but there's been a meme lately with
Yeah,
Kate
the
Bush.
Kate Bush song. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the I think that was the last episode I watched.
Awesome. Oh, that was a tense episode. It was
Yeah.
good. It
I
was good build up by the end of it.
I'm glad they didn't kill her because I like the actress.
Hmm.
But they really should have, only because they like, I don't know. I j-
Well, it would have made perfect sense because that would have been like that would have correlated with season 1 when they found Will's body in the quarry, I think, or whatever it was. Like it wasn't really him,
right.
but like the sadness of it and the music, it was all heightened emotions, and it was like for me, it was the most impactful episode of season 1, and then it kind of went downhill after that. This would have been a perfect moment to do something like that, where yeah, there are consequences for this
Yeah.
awful stuff that's happening. Not everyone has to survive.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine that they introduced the weakness and or the workaround because they would have had to have found a workaround eventually anyway. So it's
Yeah,
fine. It's fine that they did that and saved her, but I felt like it was a good opportunity to put some stakes in the game because they
right.
have not killed any character that we care about yet.
I know, and like you kind of have to, right? They can't
Yeah,
always just live.
if
So
you're just killing randos, I don't care. Like we don't care.
no,
We're not emotionally attached to these people. Okay, with that being said, with that being said, let me cue this thing up here. Here we go. Mad God, a corroded diving bell descends amidst a ruined city, and the assassin emerges from it to explore a labyrinth of bizarre landscapes inhabited by freakish denizens. Written and directed by Phil Tippett. Okay.
that's yeah, that's an adequate lead in
Yeah,
synopsis.
yeah, I think that's fine. It's got a 7 on IMDb, which is I don't know, outrageously high for what this film is.
Considering
Um,
what you would normally expect to see in IMDb, it does seem generous
yeah,
because I would expect people to shit on this.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's got praise from Guillermo del Toro, Kathleen Kennedy. Um, who the Kathleen Kennedy comment's weird. like,
Yeah,
what,
we can ignore Kathleen Kennedy, right? Like, is she anything important anymore?
uh, I mean,
What
if
did she
you
most recently do? Star Wars or something?
every single Star Wars show on Disney Plus and
Right.
the entire sequel trilogy.
Okay, right. So I can be mad at her about Obi-Wan being shit.
Yeah, and episode 8.
Right.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan is so stupid. It's funny. This is a good segue because Mad God Phil Tippett, the creator of Mad God, Phil Tippett is a um, all-star of visual effects, specifically stop motion animation, and has worked on a lot of the things that we grew up watching over and over and over again. Most notably, Star Wars, then into like RoboCop, Jurassic Park, and the like, and that's when things get shaky where CG starts to get implemented and he's more now doing other roles in the background. But all the dumb fucking commercials that we would watch growing up, he was kind of involved in or a part of or was behind the scenes in some way, like the Pillsbury Doughboy, popping fresh, sticking the finger on the belly. Hoo-hoo. I
That
think
was
he mentioned he was around when that was happening. Mrs. Buttersworth was doing her thing, all that crazy. So Phil Tippett's been around for fucking ever. After I watched this, I had to read or listen to some interviews with him because I was just engrossed with wanting to know more about him and how he this came about.
Yeah, so Mad God was crazy. First of all, it runs just shy of 90 minutes, and it feels like a Tool music video without the music, right? Um, it's stop motion, most of it's claymation, but there's some real people in there and some actual like camera motion that he like cut frames out of to give you that stop motion feel, which was cool. Um, and there is definitely a story, although it's a little tricky to follow because there is no dialogue. Um, it's essentially an experience, and what you take away from it, how you interpreted it, that's your version of Mad God. That's how you get to experience it. That's how you get to feel about it. So I think we are gonna have like a very general discussion about some scenes and how we felt about it. Because there's no
Hmm.
real other way I think to discuss this movie.
Well, and it's sort of a situation where this is very much a piece of art, and so you know, it reminds me of being in school and being in a gallery, or the gallery space, or a classroom, and there's pieces on the wall, and we're all going to take our turn and eventually talk about the next piece and whatever that might be. And this is invariably where there are some in class that are very able and or willing to dig in and try to interpret and talk about and exude as much information and have a dialogue about what they're looking at. But then there are others that are just not going to say a fucking word. They're also going to get a master's at the end of this, but they have no fucking clue how to interpret or interact with the work in front of them. And so you're like lacking a voice in this conversation. It's very frustrating. But to me, this movie is this experience where it's like it's just a piece of art, and it's you get in you get out of it what you're going to put into it. However you want to approach it and however you want to get in and dig into what's going on is what you're going to come away with. It's not going to feed you the traditional narrative or how to interpret, or this is what this means and this is doing this and that's that. And it's not going to have any of the other things you would normally see in a film, like you were mentioning. There's no dialogue. All of those kinds of things are just gone. And so this really is a matter of you um, engaging with the material to try to get something out of it. The viewer has to do a lot of work if you want to get something out of it. But if that's not your thing, it's still a goddamn feast for your eyes and ears the
Oh yeah.
whole time through. 100%.
Yeah, yeah. If you're not ready for something deep or you're just not interested, I mean, you smoke a J and then just watch this movie
I
and
couldn't help but think on
you're
that.
gonna have a fucking blast. Like this reminded me of like how much drugs I would do in high school and watch The Wall.
Yeah,
Like teenagers should be lining up around the block to stream Bad God to get
absolutely, dude.
fucked up and watch this movie because it would be fun as hell.
Oh, for sure. That's all I could think about while I was watching. I was like, man, I wish that I was under the influence of something right now. I just went stone cold sober and was just like, no, I want to see what's going on. And I didn't know what to expect. I'm not sure if I would want to know. I think that I would want to know. I think that a film like this is good in a setting where it's like you kind of inform the audience what they're going to be getting into so that they're prepared how to engage with it. I think that that would be beneficial. I could see this being part of like a film series or a thing where there's a brief introduction by a host that mentions Phil Tippett and some of the work and just kind of like gently leads you into it. I don't want to say that his work doesn't speak for itself, but I feel that broader an audience would have a better time approaching it had they had a little bit of ammunition to going forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. A nice little. I would love it to be Phil Tippett, a little from the director, before the movie, and just give him a little intro. That would be sweet. They used to do that with some stuff back in the day.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I want to say Jim Henson has done it.
Oh yeah,
Did he do it for Storytellers? I can't remember
I don't
now.
know storytellers.
Have to rewatch. Okay, so without without trying to sound too fancy, this movie is full of fucked up shit
Hmm.
that you're gonna.
Dumb it down, Nate. Quit talking over people's
Yeah,
heads.
I'm just playing to our audience, just trying to
You got
just
to
trying.
punch up, not
Yeah, I got to
down.
punch up, down, down. Uh, that you're gonna be glad you saw. I mean, it starts right off with a guy. he's got like a cool mask. He's got some tubes. He's in a like what they would put you in like a almost like an iron lung, right? Where they send you down
Mhm.
underwater. Except he's coming down from the sky, and there's like some cannons that shoot at him, and he goes through all these layers, these levels, and it reminds me right away of like Dante's Inferno. He's like
Yeah, I know.
he's descending into hell, like, and it's disgusting when he gets down there. There's these like humanoid creatures that are faceless, and it almost looks like their skin or the whatever's their surface is like hair. It's just
Yeah,
like
I think that that's what it is. It's
balls
like
of
compressed
hair.
lint and hair,
Yeah,
and you see them being molded and molded.
yeah,
And yeah, this whole first setting and a lot of the settings, the majority of the settings in the film are all very sort of post-apocalyptic dystopias,
yeah,
industrial,
yeah. Very
um,
industrial.
everywhere. There's one shot early on where you see the little toxic waste pool, and it's just so beautifully, it's bright neon green, and you see all the industrial hard edges, very few organic shapes, just him and interacting with it. But, from that whole sequence that you're mentioning, from then moving forward, like everything about the stop motion is so clean and
Oh
so
yeah,
precise. You can tell that these are puppets, but things are so fluid, it's eerie. And
yeah,
as the film progresses, there are some moments like when we get two sequences later where the assassin is in the jeep and he's driving a car, so this car is moving seamlessly as if it's an actual fucking automobile that is gas powered. He's driving through all those pikes with the skulls on them and the hair
yeah.
is whipping. So how do you fucking film hair flowing as fluid as it was? It's like it looks like that's live action. It's so
Right.
clean. I'm thinking, okay, this is live action, but then the stop motion model is doing its thing, which is definitely stop motion. I don't know the tricks that they use, but they're so goddamn excellently crafted that it's a neat shot and neat things are happening. But like that's what's like you're like engrossed and God,
Oh
it's
yeah, they did such an amazing job. Like I don't think the last big budget, and we don't even know if Mad God was big budget. We just know that it comes from a guy who's made some money. Was what, like Nightmare Before Christmas or like Coraline, and like
mhm.
those movies don't hold a candle in quality to the stop motion in this film.
Yeah, because it's just it's this is going after realism. There are very few objects that are utilized that you can reference scale or our world to. Like I think there's one moment where I see like a pencil, um, but it's very infrequent that you see a common object that you can be like, oh, that's a paperclip that was used to make that. Most of the time, it's it looks like a goddamn steel
Well,
structure that
yeah.
it's a model, but it looks like a fucking real thing.
Oh, at the same time, I don't think scale exists in this world because you've got your assassin character who you would assume is our size, right? You kind of identify with him as the
Right.
protagonist.
He's a human shape, yeah.
Yeah, and then you see like this human in like a chair, in like a dentist chair, held back with his mouth open, and like sewage and feces and is gushing into his mouth, and
Right.
it's like, oh, that's fucking cool. And then the camera's gonna pop out, and the assassin's walking by it, and he's as tall as the shoe, and he walks
Mhm.
by the shoe very carefully, and you're like, oh wow, well that is weird. That's a giant man who's being forced to eat all that feces and sewage that's being flushed into his mouth from a different part of the machine, which we just
Yeah,
saw minutes ago, creating all that disgusting stuff that was, as far as we knew, was just
yeah.
going down into nowhere. Um,
And
yeah,
that
I mean,
happens again and again. It's like this Rube Goldberg type contraptions that continue to break
oh
material
yeah,
down
yeah, yeah.
and then
He
reassemble material to
yep.
create new deformed grotesqueries of have human shape but are so unhuman. It's It's wild, and so, yeah, like, I mean, those are, like, the broad strokes of it. So it's like this guy that, like, the description said, he's, going through in a labyrinth of all these freakish denizens and, of all this stuff, and so there's, like, a mission. He's got a briefcase, and he's trying to, seemingly to plant this briefcase bomb to detonate the this machine,
Yeah, the
this
structure.
world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But, when he gets to his destination, which is done beautifully too, he references a map and, like, he's continually snipping off pieces of the map, and the map isn't overtly, they can't really see, like, point A to point B. It's not a dotted line with an
Yeah, you have
X,
no idea.
but, like, you see sort of images, and then it, like, falls apart as he gets further into the labyrinth. It's really just a neat little
Yeah,
touch.
I thought it was great.
And he's
Um,
folding the paper. It looks like natural, like how you would
yeah.
fold
Oh
paper.
yeah.
But so, like, he gets to the goal, and, like, this is a theme that comes up a couple times in the film, where it's littered with other suitcase bombs that obviously have not done what they were supposed to do,
Yeah.
and, like, the futility of their seeming purpose
Right.
is like that you just sit with that, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
the weight of, like, it, like, for me, like, there's moments in this film like that specifically, because you see it's like it seems like such a burdensome, difficult journey, right? And there's stakes because it's looks horrendous. If something goes awry, what's gonna happen to him, you know? And by the end of it, you get to it and it's like, this is all a fool's errand. This is a suicide mission. Nothing is gonna come of this. And, like, the futility of that, for me, I was like, it was like gave me like a sick to my stomach type
Right.
feeling, because it's like, how often are you in that position in life, and that you feel that?
Well, I think that
It
is
was gross.
the overall theme when we get to it, right? So he, he overcomes these things. This great creature with a chainsaw that, in my opinion, was a waste because he was only used for like to kill like one little monster, and then you don't see him again. It was so sad. That thing with
Oh, what?
the
Oh,
big
the,
mouth creature with the chainsaw. Oh, it was so cool.
oh, the hatchet. It was a hatchet, though,
Oh,
wasn't
was it
it?
a hatchet? Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Either way, yeah, the one that's, like, really on, like, a lot of the posters with the big teeth and
Yeah, with the
the
big
out.
teeth. Yeah,
Yeah, that was a creepy scene. That
yeah.
is early on in the first Assassin's mission.
Yeah, and then so we were talking before we started about the hotel. He sees like a hotel, and you get a couple flashes in these windows, and like the first window, it's actual like live film footage of like porn, actual porn, and then like the next one is whatever, and then the next one is like some dude just stabbing over and over and over again, and they're all silhouettes, and it looks very cool, and then it like comes back, and so you're getting like a picture of like how crazy this world is.
Mhm.
And before we continue with the plot, I wanted to mention the we were talking about the hair guys, the humanoids that look like they're covered in hair. Um, these characters are like the lemmings, right? Of this hellscape, this hell world, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
They seem to be doing all the jobs, all over the place, different jobs everywhere. They seem to mess up a lot and just die because they messed up. And if they mess up doing their job, it doesn't seem to matter. Like
No, yeah.
the thing they messed up just kind of gets pushed out of the way, and then the next group comes in, and hopefully they don't mess it up. Um, and I remember thinking about them as lemmings, and then there's a break in the assassin storyline where it goes to a claw just picking up. It's a field of mounds of these hair humanoid bodies,
Mhm.
and this claw is just picking them up and dropping them into dump trucks, and the dump trucks are driving them away to be dumped into like a grinder to be recycled into more hair humanoid beings.
Yeah.
Um, which yeah, just way out there stuff that you
Right,
really want
that
to. Yeah.
you interpret, you understand, like, the intent or the messaging that could be there, um, and it's just done in such a bizarre, absurd, beautiful way that it's kind of just more entertaining or, like, thoughtful. experiences, and it's just like, fuck, dude, like, it's just hopeless, and it's like, Jesus Christ, this is our world. We're no fucking better than this
Yeah.
goddamn place. Like, so I mean, look, I don't think that it's I think we'll continue on with like how this narrative goes because there's really just a couple acts, but I'm more interested. Maybe we should like pick out moments in it that I think speak to us or that were important. So the first one is that first assassin's mission.
Yeah, the first session.
Um,
So he gets to the end, and his suitcase it clicks, but then it unclicks, and it doesn't quite click to the last second. So it's almost like it was defective, not like
right, right.
because nobody stopped the timer. The timer
No,
just didn't tick.
yeah, it went
Um,
backwards a tick when it was going to strike 12 and
right.
seemingly detonate.
So he and the assassin at this point gets captured.
Yeah.
And that kind of is that's kind of the end of Act One. And Act Two, which was a crazy, insane sequence. Not like Act One wasn't. Starts with the doctor and the nurse.
Hmm.
They cut the assassin open as kind of like his punishment, and they start rooting around and pulling things out of him. They pull out like jewelry, and then they start pulling out papers and books.
Hmm.
And then the doctor finds what he was looking for, like a larva of some kind that's crying like a human baby
Yeah.
that he hands off to the nurse and that the nurse takes away.
Yeah.
um, just like, I mean, I don't know, like it's once again, it's the craziest shit you've ever seen, or that you never knew you wanted to see, because there wasn't. I don't think there was a single sequence that I was like, oh, gross. I didn't want to see that. Every scene, I was like, oh, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah, and the thing that we haven't, I guess, mentioned outright is that this whole time the visuals are all there, but the other aspect that we haven't noted is the score and the
Ooh,
sound design
oh sure,
because this whole thing it's not just action happening with sound effects. There's a there's sometimes orchestral um or industrial,
yeah,
grungy type stuff. There's always musical type elements in the background that are giving you the emotional navigation of the scenes or the anxiety, like that whole autopsy type scene. He's alive during this, but the whole
oh yeah,
autopsy scene has like this weird metronome type weird suctiony clicking noise that goes on in the background the whole time and is just unnerving.
yeah.
But
And
but
there's
the
yeah,
sound effects, but
oh,
Jesus, the sound effects,
the
because
sound
there are
effects.
moments, you mentioned all the excrement coming down into the one character, like, that was what they were the electrocution room was there before that. The
Yep,
sound of that event was
yeah.
so perfect,
So
and
the
later on in this, like, the war scene, good god.
yeah.
Like, the most amazing sound effects with
Well,
stop motion.
the right. So we were talking about that excrement and yeah, the electrical. So it was a bunch of people like heads hooked up to these shockers that are just shocking their heads,
Yeah, there's a
and
bunch
then
of, like, a series of electric chairs.
yeah, you see all the sludge and slime coming out of them from under where their ass would be, and that's what the other guy in the dentist chair
Yeah,
was like just being force fed it.
yeah.
Um,
But
yeah,
so, like,
because
so yeah, just the sound design, like, because man, it's got to be an impossible task because you're animating in your own room and environment, and then now you need to put sound to it, and
to
that seems like
everything.
such a Herculean task. Aside from just the stop motion that took years to film,
Yeah,
because literally, we haven't said it yet, but this is a 30-year
30
project.
year. Yeah.
Phil Tippett began it in '87 and had to shelve it from time to time to focus on other things, pay the bills, do a project or whatever, or just take breaks from the insanity of doing the work. by the time he was nearing the end, after listening to some of his interviews, he committed himself because he was like just psychologically drained and distraught from having worked on this and labored over it for so long. And a lot of that comes out in the work too. It's wild. It really was a passion project for him. But so anyway, so all that work that you're doing to then now you have to have all these sound effects work with the intricate nature of what you just filmed seems so difficult. Or like, you just built this amazing structure and now you have to build another amazing thing that's going to be on par with this other thing. It's so daunting and intimidating to think about it like that, you know what I mean? It makes me sick just thinking about the amount of work that had to
Oh
go
yeah,
in
yeah,
because it
and
really is a life's work, you know?
the audio work is on par with the video work as far as I'm concerned. There were scenes where, specifically, I think it was either at the end of Act One or during Act Two, where there's almost like a so we talked about the lemmings and how they're kind of carrying out these orders. There seems to be like a boss, and the boss is on like four different TV screens, and he's kind of
Mm,
truncated and turned to different directions. And mostly it's just a mouth, a
mhm,
gnarly set of lips, and a gnarly set of teeth, but definitely adult human-sized head. But you can't see all of it, right? And his mouth is moving, and at the exact moments his mouth is moving, the sound that's coming out is baby talk.
mhm,
uh, and the drones, the hair people, they do stop and kind of look at the monitors and
mhm.
listen before they continue on with their work. And this short scene, 10 maybe 15 seconds, but it was just so good. like
Yeah, man,
I'm
I
like
like
I watched extra hard to make sure that those lips were synced up with that baby talk,
oh, yeah,
and they absolutely were, and it was like this is so fucking weird.
for sure, like, and that's the thing, like, every single vignette in this film, you can sit with and dissect and pick apart all the things that are going on sensorily and interpret and come to conclusions. Um, shit, like, I don't want to go and just talk about the rest of the film just outright, uh, but
Well, it seems like doing this in order isn't so bad.
no, it's not so bad. It's just like it's not important to describe every single moment, and so, but more or less, so the first assassin's missions obviously failed. He's now autopsied. A larva is extracted, and it's been given to this plague doctor, Grim Reaper figure,
Yep.
shamanesque almost. Yeah, they've got the bones. That was a great detail in this. Like that character had these bones dangling from its wide brimmed hat, and you could see the
Oh,
plague doctor
I loved the Plague
nose.
Doctor. The
And every time it's on screen, it's floating. It's an apparition almost.
yeah,
It's a ghost, or it hovers, and it has like the flittering of its robes all tattered and torn. And you see it regularly. They show it's hovering above the ground, but you can see it wavering, and you're in awe. Like, how the fuck do you do this? How do you do this? Because
yeah,
it's insane. There's no way to explain it. It's so It's wild. That was so anyway, so that character takes over the little larva baby. It's been handed over to him, and now
yep,
he's on his little mission to kind of deliver this larva baby to a different character that we'll see later on. The surgeon kind of gets into does a takes a piece of the first assassin's skull open and puts a telescope in there, and they're going to start to use that to get vision into his thoughts. It looks like
yeah,
they're seeing his thoughts and things like that. Um, and so then I think we're gonna cut to the scene where we only get the other actual human actor that's doing normal live action
right. And that's the
interacting.
and that's the mad scientist,
Yeah,
right?
this is played by Alex Cox. He was also one of the I don't know if he might be labeled as a producer in part. I think that he assisted with some of the funds in it, and was a buddy of Phil's, and so he was playing this role. And yeah, the last man. He's like sort of the guy in the top of the tower, and he's the one
Right,
that's kind of um giving out these orders to kind of figure things out. He's the one making the maps to give to the
right,
assassins with the briefcases to then go on their mission. And so this whole scene is him prepping another mission that's going to go.
right. And he sends another one, which is great to see because the movie starts, the assassin is already in the tube coming down.
Right.
So now we get to see where he's coming from and who's
Hmm.
behind these assassins, so to speak. Also, this is like initiating Act Three. Is the second assassin being sent, right?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could consider it that way, or I mean, maybe Act Three is more or less the Act Three is probably the Garden of Eden and the Big Bang. Um,
Right.
this could be maybe like
Oh,
the
this is
the bigger chunk of Act
this is
Two.
yeah, this is Act yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
What yeah.
But so this is the second assassin. In this one, I loved this mission first because for me, this sequence now is same kind of thing. He's getting dropped down there, and now he has to navigate this hellscape, and he's going to interact with different kinds of characters. There's going to be other more absurd imagery, but this one he is utilizing a vehicle. He is not on foot the entire time, and this is like just where it's visual eye candy again to like the 10th degree because he gets a fucking motorcycle and it all sounds and looks so goddamn real. He like bangs on the dash of it, the handlebars whenever it starts breaking down. It just sounds like it has the weight. And it's like the smallest little thing. um and then he gets into a Jeep and every aspect of the Jeep. The best part is going to be the war scene that's coming up where he has to cross like trenches and there's gunfire and explosions between tanks and other mechanized artillery. And the sound here is where I was like, "Holy shit." Because there's like gunfire and you see like the red or orange like tracers of the rounds going across the fields and it's like rapid fire machine gun. They're sort of lasery, but then you'll see it hit something and then and you see the explosion, you see like a pyrotechnic practical effect, but it sounds so goddamn real, like an actual heavy artillery thing. And then there's moments where it's shooting a different tank, and then it's like it's miss, and then it go ding, and it like and the sound over this side or over on this side, it's going off screen the right way. And I'm just like, holy shit, how? This whole movie, you're constantly being blown away by what they're achieving in this stop motion world. It's crazy.
So he actually succeeds though, right? This is where um
Well, he goes and goes and goes. He gets to the spiral staircase more or less that he's got to keep driving down. Um, and I don't think we ever see him. We don't see him ever get to the bottom. He gets to it and he keeps going down. Right.
I'm a little
I
fuzzy.
think
Yeah.
I think it cuts away before we actually see him conclude, and
All
more or
right.
less it leaves him there, and then it gets back to our plague doctor escorting the baby, and this is where we now meet our last little, I guess what I'll call like a Quasimodo type guy, and he's sort of like a shaman creature dude with like leprosy or something. He's got all these growths on him.
Oh yeah, this guy.
And he's like a mad
uh,
scientist type dude. He's got
yeah.
2 monkeys that just keep slamming each other with shovels,
Yeah, yeah,
and he
yeah.
electrocutes them to get them back to work, and they
Yeah.
start shoveling more shit.
Yeah. This
And
guy
then
looked amazing.
yeah, he had, yeah, because his face was all
He's got all
bubbly,
those
but then
growths on
the
the one
facial
side.
hair,
Yeah, yeah,
and then it's like it looks like just stubble, and it's very visceral.
yeah. So he's putting something together.
Yeah, he cleans his little area up, and then he has, like, these little it's like he's got all these things to interact with. The little he opens up and he has like this sort of there's this Garden of Eden scene. That's why I mentioned that earlier, like where you see it now. There's this beautiful psychedelic type
Right,
color
right, right, right,
colored
right.
environment
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
these weird
He
things that have
he like
pill-shaped heads.
he's putting like fish food in there, and you see it's piling up, and it's actual maggots, like live action
Yeah,
maggots. And then he like presses a button, the two things come out that eat the maggots. They're shoving them into their eating holes. Then he
yeah.
presses the button again. This spider creature comes out that eats the things that eat the maggots. One runs away, the other one gets eaten or gets taken away anyway.
While
And,
the
and like
spider's taking that thing away, you cut to and you see like two lice that are playing cards and drinking tea.
yeah,
Like what? It's like,
yeah,
like so. Okay, so that moment right there, those models took days or weeks to build,
yeah,
and then to animate and to shoot all that, more days and weeks for a 2-second side clip that has no importance, no relevance,
yeah.
but it was fucking cool.
It's just super cool, and it gives you like the viewer a chuckle,
And it's
as to
just
like,
layer and layer and layer
yeah,
all of the insanity that's happening in the environment. It just creates that tapestry of chaos. It's beautiful.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
anyways, the plague doctor arrives to hand off the larva
The
baby.
lover, yep.
He gets the larva baby. Immediately, larva baby's in a contraption. He's winding it. Larva baby dies, but his goo is now fed to a machine to go somewhere to then get poured into a crucible that gets fired. And he pours that into an ingot. And then he has the
Oh,
ingot.
right. And
He now puts that into a mortar rather, and he pestles it to get into a dust, and he hands that off to the plague doctor. And this is where like the final scene commences, more or less. Uh, and the plague doctor says to open up the hatch, and he takes the dust from this thing, because you got to think about how this dust created, right? Like mad scientist, last man in the top has an assassin, go on a mission, fails the mission. They take the assassin, autopsy him, take out a larva, gets to the plague doctor, comes down here. And now it's like just all these layers of breaking down to now get this dust. And he launches it out the window, and it more or less visually creates the Big Bang. And you get the 2001 Space Odyssey montage where now you're
right,
seeing creation
and it
occur from this dust.
right, it creates another world that immediately descends into dystopian madness. Essentially, the world that we know,
Hmm.
that we just watched. Um, and then we get a quick clip of the mad scientist like loading up another assassin.
He's not. No, he's not. He's just the last image. He's looking down there.
Oh, he just looks down.
He's just looking down to
Yeah, yeah.
see.
Just
Wonder. I wonder how he's doing. I wonder if it's working. Like.
see. Okay,
It,
so that is not how I interpreted it. Right. So
okay.
this. So for me, he's about to send another assassin down. Because what just happened is it's the cycle. It's starting over again right now. Like the explosion for me was the explosion, right? It destroyed the old world, created the new world, which is exactly the same as the old world. And now the mad scientist is like, all right, guys, go down there and destroy it again. That's how I took the ending.
Yeah. I mean, I saw it as like him. Like it's he's still there waiting for the results. He's still
Right,
waiting for the test results of this most recent assassin to see what comes from it. Um, and yeah, and then it's just cut to credits, and you
the
see all
credits.
the
Yeah.
amazing artists and puppeteers that were a part of it. And man, it was wild. So in one of the interviews that I listened to, I don't remember. I don't think I texted you it, but Phil Tippett was describing how he would early in his years, or earlier in his career at least, he would go out to dinner with this guy. Shit, I can't remember his name at the moment. Um, Foreman, something Foreman, Miles Foreman, or some other Foreman. I apologize for not remembering. But at any rate, it was a filmmaker, and he wanted Phil was asking him if he had any wisdom to impart because he's a virgin filmmaker. He's about to come into the world and wants to get as much information as he can. So this guy, so he asks him like, what do you have? What wisdom do you have to impart? And the guy tells him, and this is Phil interpreting or paraphrasing what was said, that the guy tells him, if you want to take a good shit, you have to eat a good meal. And so for him, what that meant, and the way that I interpret that as well, is you need to do all the preparation or all the work. You have to put all the time in or all the study, all of the preemptive stuff that goes into creating a piece of work. Like that all has to be done properly in order for you to get it out of your system and to make something that is beautiful. And it was
Right.
just a really crude, absurd way to say it, but I love it.
Sure. All right. Um, After all that insanity, I would have to give Mad God. I'm gonna agree with the IMDb audience and give that movie a solid 7.
So for me, Mad God, oh man, that's my really? It's my first June one? Oh, interesting. Christ, yeah, because it's been a while since I saw him in. Anyway, Mad God for me is a 9. Uh it's not a traditional film, and but it's a 9.
Hey, hey,
It's a
man,
piece of art,
it's a piece of art.
and there's just so much to enjoy about it. And the for me, that's where it stands. It's just it's its own thing. I can't compare it to other things that I would give a lesser score or a greater score to. It's just like it's its own unique thing, and for me at this moment, I feel that it is deserving of that score for me. So
Great,
that's
awesome.
where I got it.
All right, moving on to Alex Garland's Men. A young woman goes on a solo vacation to the English countryside following the death of her ex-husband. That's a pretty simplistic uh, intro line there.
I mean, that's a good thing that it's simple. I don't like some of the nouns that they use. I don't. I mean, the movie's okay. Yeah, we've already done spoilers and all that.
Yeah,
The movie starts with the death of a character. You see a person falling, but you
right.
don't have any frame of reference to know who, what, when, where, why. So I
Exactly.
don't think that I need to read this. I wouldn't want to know this before watching it.
Oh, that it was an ex-husband, right?
Right. Well, but current husband that
Or a current husband. Yeah, no, that's true. They were in the process. They didn't even start the process of getting
No.
divorced. She had
Yeah.
just brought it up. Yeah.
All right. So broad strokes. Yeah.
Starring Jesse Buckley and Rory Kinnear. Rory Kinnear doing a lot of work in this movie.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and the broad strokes. First of all, this movie's fantastic. It's A24. I expect nothing less at this point.
Yeah.
Um, Soaked in metaphor. Once again, not quite as open to interpretation as Mad God. Well, a little bit more pointed. Um, but Atmospheric, slow burn, very tense.
Mhm.
As a man in a world where toxic masculinity is being attacked all the time, and we're fighting for women's rights, we're fighting for LGBT rights. Um, this movie, uh, definitely can open your eyes to some stuff you might not be aware that even you do in your day to day when you talk to women. Like, I think there was a lot of moments where the characters that weren't villains, um, where their dialogue was written in such a way that they were supposed to be helpful and friendly, but they were still, uh, you know, accidentally condescending, or like where you could tell that it wasn't like purposeful for the character to be this way, but a woman is going to take it this way, and this is the kind of stuff that that gets talked about when it comes to like mansplaining and
So they were villains. I mean, right? Because maybe not overtly, but what do you think about the titling of the movie?
oh, men, right?
Right.
So,
Is it too on the nose?
well, okay, so if you take it from the perception of the main character, right? I think that for her, her journey, because of w- the experience with her husband,
Mhm.
um, she was just very, I don't want to say too sensitive, but like she was obviously way more tuned in to that kind of treatment, because she was coming off of this like, all right, so here you go. The husband threatened, um, "I will kill myself if you divorce me."
Mhm.
Uh,
Which she very clearly she wanted a divorce,
right.
and then he says something like that, and she's like, "Yeah, you see, that's exactly
That
why we
why
need to
we
get a
need a
fucking
divorce.
divorce, you
Right.
psycho."
Right. Right.
All valid.
You
Yeah.
can't you
This
can't
is
say
that is
yeah.
emotional abuse. You don't
Yes.
get to say that
You don't get to
to
say that.
convince me to stay with you.
Exactly. So and she says, "You don't get to say that. You don't get to say that." And he says, "Well, I do, and and it's gonna be on your conscience, and I'm gonna haunt you forever
Yeah.
if you do this, if you divorce me." Um, so he's trying to force uh, her to continue loving him is what he wants, because
Mhm.
when she
Yeah, he
finally
wants the marriage to continue. Yeah, he doesn't
yeah.
want to break up, obviously. Yeah.
So so he hits her. They have a huge fight. He hits her. She throws him out. And then he kills himself, or accidentally falls off the roof.
Yeah, we
Uh,
don't know.
uh, right. I I interpret it as he killed himself. Um, that's just how I see it. There's no rhyme or reason to why I choose to see it that way.
Okay.
Uh,
It's a
no, no,
good good defense.
yeah. I'm just saying like,
Uh,
well,
I
okay,
don't really know why. It's just what I've decided.
yeah. It's just what I've decided. I think that it makes more sense that he killed himself,
Fucking
right? He said he was gonna do it. He said he was gonna.
Amber Heard should have called you for fucking defense. Jesus.
Well, and I mean
You
anybody,
can argue. You can argue a point strong.
anybody would have done a better job than her
Um.
defense.
So what I was asking about the title of the movie, and like you started that by saying how uh you're talking about how her perception
Yeah,
is impacted by these original events
events. Yeah,
that we don't see in full, but that's what comes to pass.
right.
And so it's not, that is the event as we know it and as she's told it. And so what you're saying then is like that the title of the movie is really a referential thing to her and her experience that she is now seeing men as men.
Yeah,
Like this is
so
all men. This is
right. So we get another device in the movie as a viewer where all of them have the same face, right?
mhm,
Um, and I mean this is pretty cut and dry. Like all men are the same, right? Which is like a cliche, saying. Uh, and they're not all the same. All the characters are different in the film, but that's like that's her position, right?
right.
Like that's how she's feeling. Um, that's how she's interpreting the way these men are treating her. Um,
Mhm.
she first gets onto the property. She eats the apple. I immediately think Garden of Eden.
Of
She
course.
gets in there, and uh, she says something about eating the apple, and he makes a joke about it. He didn't intend anything by it. He's joking. She gets offended. He gives her the tour of the place. He goes, hate to do this, shouldn't have said, but be careful what you flush, cause cause you're a lady, you know. So he goes out of his way, again to like he doesn't mean anything by it.
Yeah, he's Jeffrey, the owner of the estate that she is renting for her holiday. We'll use that term because this is obviously England.
Yes.
And, and uh so while she's on holiday at this estate, he's sort of like the bumbling country bumpkin-esque type guy, big
Yeah.
teeth, what you would imagine a English country folk type guy to be. And yeah, he's sort of like a dad joke type character where he doesn't realize or doesn't understand the how it could be interpreted. The social norms of today and how you're
Right.
supposed to talk with people mean nothing to him. He's lived this way his whole life. He's not gonna pick up the new social norms. He's
Yeah.
absent-minded to it, not maliciously but in such a way that it's off-putting, even to us, like, to make a joke, "The forbidden fruit," and to say, "Oughtn't do that," like, that's a bit condescending, like, and she's just put off, uh, like,
Yeah.
that's an uncomfortable joke. You're making me feel like I did something bad. I didn't. I'm staying at this place and there's an apple tree. I'm gonna just eat an apple. I'm experiencing the English countryside and the
Yeah.
estate that I'm renting.
Yeah.
Uh,
For
so
two
yeah, like
weeks,
I
so she's probably spending some good money.
right, and so like I feel yeah because he goes through and I think the other thing too. And this is where I talk about. You mentioned how the film is kind of not a lot to have to pick through. However, films like this and why I would going to appreciate subsequent rewatches for this film, I definitely will, is that there are little um we'll call them breadcrumbs along
Yeah.
the way that you can really get into. And so like he alludes to or mentions how the house is so old and historic, Shakespearean even, like that could have been around the 500s or something, or it's been around for 500 years, or it's something to that effect.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you think about some of the things that are going on as far as uh, the characters that he plays and things like that, multiple roles as far as play acting and Shakespearean works, there's little neat nods to things that are going to go on that I really love in this film. And um, so in general, do you like that title? Because we pulled away from that. Do you like it
Oh,
being
sure,
titled
sure.
Men?
Uh, so I'm gonna say yes, but maybe it could have had a better title. But again, I don't think there is a title that could have worked better, right? Like, it's a fine title. I would have liked for a better title, but when you consider the film, could you have come up with a better title? I don't think so.
Right, because it's more or less alluding to a theme or the theme of the movie, and it's just going to be unapologetically upfront about the theme of the movie. Uh, I think it's just meant to reinforce, like, don't have any illusions. Like, this is what this is about. There's all kinds of other stuff going on to help inform, but this is the point. Uh, this is how our character is perceiving the world. This is how a lot of people are perceiving, because in general, like the main character Harper is us, or is the it's us as
Uh,
a bystander, and it's
so
women in general.
yeah,
How
yeah. So I think the main character is not really the main character. I think all of the men are the main character, and she is the audience. It
I mean, I
it's
think that's
it's
I'm not saying that I disagree with that, but I think that like it's more or less saying the same thing. I don't think that saying she's main or their main is
right, right, right. Okay, okay, okay. So Right. The story is about the men. The story,
Semantics.
yeah, the story is
Right.
about the men. The story is not about her.
She's our
She
navigator
yeah,
through it.
right. She experiences the men.
Right.
Yes, and that's
Yeah.
right, exactly. And yes, and that is not something everybody would get. Like, and that's why you watch our show and then you go back and you watch the movie a second time.
So yeah, so men.
So-
So you thought I thought that the Rory Kinnear playing all of the roles was neat. I really enjoyed that
I
part of
loved
it.
it. I loved it.
Because it was sort of like an obvious thing, like, okay, yeah, like she's seeing him.
Yeah.
She saw the one guy, and now everyone she sees is just like that guy because she's just wrapped up in her thoughts or head. She can't discern individualism because they're all contributing to this overarching idea of what she hates about men or dealing with men in general
Man, yeah.
in her life due to the trauma from this most recent experience with a man who was seemingly she had married.
She married.
Like he
Yeah.
like he
So
repeated, "We made a vow,
yeah.
a sacred vow."
So there was a point in her life where she loved that man.
Right. And now something has happened so catastrophically that it has gone awry or isn't working, and then he turns into something else. And so you can't fault her 100% for being very skeptical and not seeing people for their true identity, but for putting a label on them, which we all do inherently. None of us come to any interaction with a new person without any bias whatsoever. You know, people, what do they say? People make their first impressions within like 2 or 3 seconds as to whether or not
Oh
they're going to be
yeah.
positive or negative about you.
Sure.
And so that's sort of, I loved the visual tool of using him as all of these other characters because it was subtle in moments. It was, you knew, but it was off-putting at times. You know, the child that his face was digitally thrown onto was
Yeah.
odd,
The
sort of.
teenager. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the other men. Her next encounter with a man. She goes on a nice long walk through the woods. She finds this cool tunnel
mhm,
where she sings and it echoes back to her. And then there's this
but
creepy naked dude.
yeah, it was this scene was a super haunting scene.
Yeah.
It was a slow build, her testing her voice, and she has a bit of a set of pipes, you know, she
Yeah. She.
knows
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
has a pitch, and she was throwing it to try to get the echo to do, and this comes back as an audio
Yeah.
as an
Yeah.
element that is utilized later in the film with the
Yeah.
like it's
And
there at the end and it's awesome.
what was the one where she said fuck?
I don't know.
Cause there's like a fuck off or a fuck no or a some I think it was fuck off in the echo. There was like a fuck off echo, and then they did a fuck off song during one of the sequences.
I
Um,
didn't catch that.
oh yeah, oh it was great. It was great. It was I think it was like the second time you hear it. It's
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You gotta yeah, yeah. Well, the second watch on this, I can't wait for the second viewing of this because Anastasia hasn't seen it, and
Yeah.
I think she's gonna fucking love this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, you be careful. You know, that's the thing, like, it's like, do I let a woman watch this or do I not?
I don't think you're allowed to say that, bro. Okay, okay, all
Ah,
right, all right.
what
So
she don't
she,
know, don't hurt her.
yeah, so she, all of
She's
a
playing
sudden,
with the echo,
yeah,
and
all of a
then
sudden he's there,
he
and
rises.
he kind of goes like, yeah, and
Yeah.
starts running straight at her.
So,
Um,
can we sidebar really
oh
quickly?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
There because this scene brought to mind, in college, my friends and I, would go, uh in the sewers underneath campus. There are storm drains, but they were tall enough for you to like just run. And there was water that ran down them, obviously, because it was a storm drain. But you could kind of like, we called it like sewer running. You could kind of do a couple steps over here, hop over, couple steps, hop over, couple steps. And like, you know, you'd, it's like Ninja Turtle stuff.
yeah.
Anyways, we navigated and we got used to them well. We knew their paths where they led out into this area, sometimes on campus, but then if you followed it, it'd go all the way to the river in town and you could just get out and walk above ground back to campus. Anyways, we are like, oh, we should we planned on pranking some people and we were going to try to scare them in the tunnel. And because it's pitch black, save for your flashlight. Like there's no light. Every now and then the storm drain you can see a little light. And I was in the studio painting one night. There was 3 of us that knew of this tunnel and we would regularly go. They had 2 of them arrived in my studio on campus and we're like, it's going down. We're taking a group. You need to get down there and get ready to scare the shit out of them. So I was like, okay, let's do it. I bolted. I was like, yeah, I was in the middle of just doing work. So I fucking bolted. I run all the way downtown to the river and I come into the sewer from the fucking river. And I'm just running in darkness because I know that they're coming from the other side. And I don't know. I know where they're gonna be, but I can't remember how far or whatever I have to do. So I just run until I think I'm there. And then I just wait and I'm in darkness and like it's freaky as fuck. And so then I do pretty much what happens in the scene with Harper. I'm just waiting there, and then I could tell that they're there. I see their flashlights going on the walls very, very far away. And then I take like my 2 flashlights and like I flash them and like I wait a second and I flash them and then I start making noise like, "Roar," and like I start like running towards them and it freaked the fucking shit out of these people. They were terrified and then my friends played it up and they ran and they got up a campus and for a while, for several weeks, like people you would hear rumblings from time to time of people that heard about some weird fucking townie that was in the sewer. And it was me. It was awesome.
Rodney Godek, the urban legend.
There's all kinds of stupid shit that we did. But yeah, man. So uh sorry. This film made me think of it and I hadn't relived that experience in a long time. It was wild.
All right,
So
so she runs. She runs and
yeah.
runs and runs, and she gets home, and
Jesus. Let me give it a quick detail. Like, so she's terrified. She misses her one branch to get up to the road to get back to
right,
the estate. And she terminates into a different tunnel that's been boarded off. She can't get through. So she has to run up the embankment really steep. And she feels like she's safe. She's like, oh, good. It's fine. She looks back. There's a weird fucking building. And she goes take a photo. And
right.
the the green man, what we'll call the green man because
Well,
he is
he,
nature
yeah,
embodied. He's the green
he
man.
is the Green Man. Yeah,
And there's dong in this movie, dude. There's a bunch of swinging dick,
there's a lot of dong.
and he's
Um,
in the frame, and she doesn't
yeah,
realize it, but she sees
she
that was the
sees
guy
it
that was
later.
following
Yeah,
me, and she freaks out and she runs back to the house.
right. So later in the house, he's gonna approach her and stick his hand through the mail slot, and she's gonna call 999. Um, not
Rescue
911.
999.
and and then she's gonna get interviewed by a female policewoman
Yeah,
because we will have seen Jeffrey's face and we will have seen the Green Man's face and we will now know that they are the same face in case you didn't already know. But this female police officer, we see her face normal.
hmm
In fact, there's a male police officer on the scene, but we don't see him at all.
no, yeah, you can't really
Um,
see him. And this is like the only other female lead or character in the film is her friend who we hear on the voice chat
yep.
and the phone, and then it's just this other female police officer. She's a seeming ally. You know, she's apologetic of the experience, so it must have been so scary. But and she that's all she is. Like, you know, we'll be in touch and we'll take
Yep.
them down. It must have been a bit of a fright,
Yeah,
and that's it. You know,
and they take him away.
yeah.
Um, so
So
then
then
we're
she has the journey to the church and
right.
she meets the
The
vicar.
teen, well, she meets the teenager first, right?
Right.
And then the vicar comes out to kind of uh, interject because he assumes that she's not having a good experience with the teenager.
Well,
Um,
that and he sees her screaming in the pews.
Right, right,
you
right,
know,
right. So she
because
has one of those flashbacks. Yeah.
yeah, where you get more of the story, and she's just screaming over the event
Right. So
that occurred.
even though I told the whole story with the husband at the beginning, this gets doled out over 3 or 4 flashbacks throughout the movie. Probably I think about 4 flashbacks. So just for the listener. Um, right. So the teenager is like, "Hey, play hide and seek," and she's like, "No." And the vicar comes out and says whatever, and the teenager who has the superimposed face, right, calls her a stupid bitch, um,
Mhm.
because she won't play hide and seek with him. Once again, another instance of a male character imposing his emotions onto her and making it her responsibility to, okay, in for with the teenager specifically, it's entertain me.
Mhm.
You're not going to entertain me, you stupid bitch. The the husband, love me. Oh, you're not going to love me? I'm going to kill myself. What do you think about that? Um, so this is a recurring theme through the movie with all of the characters, as we will see one at a time. So the conversation with the vicar, also very unsettling, right?
Mhm. Yeah, because he right away sees that she's grieving, and he seems conciliatory about it and letting her experience her emotions, but then he very abruptly puts it on her and says, "Well, did you give him a chance to apologize?" And
Yeah,
she's like, "What the fuck?" and takes her out of the story for a minute. And he's like, "Well, it's you must feel guilty because you caused him to do that.
yeah.
You must be processing that guilt that you led him to kill himself."
Let
And
him know stuff.
he's he's apologizing for, like, the husband, it wasn't entirely the husband's
The husband's
fault.
fault.
She had a lot, it was really her fault. She should have apologized. Had he struck you before? No,
No.
you should have let
He's
him.
Yeah, he says two
Men make
things.
mistakes.
Yeah, he says 2 things here that are insane. He says men strike women all the time. They shouldn't, but you know, you have to give him a chance to apologize.
Right.
And then the second one he said was, geez, I think you might have already said it. It was about like it being her fault.
Right.
Yeah, because she didn't give him a chance to
That you
apologize.
led him to kill himself, more or
Yeah,
less, I think,
yeah.
is how he puts it.
Yeah. So she like gets up and is like, "Fuck you, dude,"
Yeah.
because once again, like,
Well, and he's handsy, his hand lingers on her thigh too
yeah,
long too,
yeah, yeah, yeah. He did that. He did that. One thing we have to mention because we did skip the in the church. Okay, so in the church, she has
Oh, the imagery?
the imagery, right? So she has the flashback, and she has as she screams, and that's one of the things that brings the vicar out. But there's a giant
I think it might be
stat.
like a baptismal fountain type thing.
Yeah, yeah, or a dace. Is that how you pronounce
A
it?
dais? A dais? Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, it's got 2 carvings on it that are important. The first,
Bas relief.
there you
It's
go.
just the kind of sculpture. It's like a bas relief type thing. Yeah.
So the carving that faces us as you would enter the church and walk down in between the pews is the Green Man.
Hmm.
And the statue on the or the carving on the other side is can be interpreted as like Mother Earth herself, right? Opening up to maybe even giving birth in that piece, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's a woman with her pussy spread. Like
Yeah,
it's kind of like right there in your face. Like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's very. I believe that there is a term that it does describe that kind of character in the scriptures, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, as far as but embodying those kinds of symbolism, giving birth or life. um yeah, so.
So, all right. So those 2 images are important only for, uh, the end of the movie, the climax. Uh,
Hey.
hey. All right. So two more creepers down. She's so shaked by shocked by this encounter with the vicar that she goes to the pub that Jeffrey told her about.
Yes, he was funny about the pub, like a stone's throw. 10 minutes walk, 30 minutes on the way back.
Yeah, 10 minutes there, 30 minutes back. Yes. So we get inside. We have bartender, we have cop, we have Jeffrey. This is the male cop who was on the scene that we didn't see before,
Yep.
and we have
And then
Jeffrey,
two
and then
two
two
townies.
two townies who
Yeah,
look ridiculous, like the haircuts.
yeah, yeah. To like a couple of soccer hooligans is
Yeah,
what it seems like. Yeah,
but once again, the face is imposed on every character. So even the cop has the face superimposed. Um, and she,
well,
Jeff.
okay, no, the superimposed face. The only time CG is implemented is whenever it's with the child because it's a child
Oh,
actor and they
right,
have
right.
to do this. Rory Kinnear is in makeup with every
With
other character. He's
right,
wearing contacts and have a bald cap or whatever, wig or whatever.
yeah,
He's doing all of that in physical um makeup effects. It's
right,
not so when you say superimposed, it's not a digital type thing. He's playing the role. It's just
right. Yeah,
right.
I just mean, yeah,
Right.
yeah, that the character obviously isn't supposed to look like this, but it is, but it does, for whatever reason. So she orders a vodka soda, I think, or a vodka tonic, and she never gets her drink because these guys drive her out of there so fast. Jeffrey is obviously concerned because it's his tenant and asks what's going on. She tells of the story of the creepy vicar, and somehow it gets revealed that the crazy man has been released. The green man has been released, and the she's like, "What the fuck?" And so her and the cop kind of go at it here.
Yeah, they're
Um,
back and forth because Um, he explains like, well, we couldn't have held him for anything, which is seems somewhat valid. If there's a homeless vagrant type guy, and yeah, he might, even if he were to interact or he didn't physically assault, technically, there's indecent exposure. But is that something that you can like keep a man arrested and in jail awaiting a sentencing? No, you're probably just gonna give a summons to then come to a judge
right.
to do whatever. So you can't hold him indefinitely until that time comes. You kind of have to release him on his own recognizance. So you would hope that they would be sensitive and inform her, be like, "Hey, this guy that maybe kind of had a conflict, you should know this." But those social graces don't exist, and so she takes this as an affront to her safety.
Yeah.
100% because this guy did seem like a hostile threat earlier. He was
Yep.
trying to get into the home. He
Yep.
was looking through the windows, stalking her more or less,
Yep.
following her from the walk. Um, it seems like he was a threat for sure.
Yeah. So she storms out and power walks back, but about halfway there, something weird happens. Yes. Is this?
Well, the
Is
green
this?
man is in the shadows and he does see her.
Yep.
And so she freaks out and starts running. And then
Right.
she gets back.
She gets back fine for another day.
No, I think things happen this night.
This is the night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Okay. So she doesn't make it back to the house. She makes it to like the courtyard
Right,
where she turns to find the green man has now transformed a little bit more. There was a one quick scene where you see him like cut a slit in his own forehead and slide a leaf in there.
right.
And now when he comes around the corner, he's stuck branches all in himself, and excuse me, as you might have been like crazy homeless guy for this character through the whole movie. I mean, now he's taken on the green man like persona like completely.
Right. So when she gets back to the house, she kind of contacts her friend to have her
Right,
come,
right.
and then that's when the interactions with characters start to happen. and she becomes under like attack more or less. The cop shows up outside, and
Right, she goes outside because it's the cop. And
right, the
then
lights
the lights
start to
flicker
flicker,
and the
and
cop's gone. And this is where the Green Man is full Green Man. And he blows the dandelions. And she inhales one. And now this is where everything goes nuts. And you got to ask yourself, because A24 movies have done this kind of thing before, where it's how much of it's a hallucination, how much of it is real, how much of it is she's crazy because of the guilt, grief of her husband killing himself, blah blah. If any of that stuff even exists, for me, you have to take everything that happens here as if it actually happened, and it's just a fucked up string of events. I
mhm,
don't I don't take any of this as hallucination or all made up or anything like that. Especially with the ending, right? Um, I mean the very ending. Like I think that kind of seals the deal, as in like all this stuff actually happened, and it's just like a crazy series of
right,
events, right? Um, so it's weird how the villain changes too, but always has Rory Kinnear's face.
mhm,
So she runs from the villain, who at this point is the teenager or the Green Man. I can't quite remember. But she shuts the door and oh no, it's the Green Man. She shuts the door and it sticks its hand through the mail slot just like before. Except this time she has a knife. So she sticks it in the arm, and this scene was awesome, right?
yeah.
It
This
it pull
was one of the more unnerving scenes. Like I was definitely squirming and cringing. Like it was because the practical effect as it occurs is really great. It's a normal type thing. It's somewhat innocuous. Like it's just a knife through the arm, but they take their time with what is going to happen. Like this
yeah,
effect of where he has the knife through his arm. The knife is restricted by the mail slot, and so like he's using that friction of it to slowly pull um, his arm out of the mail slot. But because the blade is facing toward the palm, it's cutting its way as he's slowly pulling. And for me, the most unnerving part happens where it gets to like the wrist and there might be a bone or something in the way and it doesn't just gently glide. And he like taps it, like uh, and like there that clicking noise of it in the visual, like I was just like, I fucking like, I like squirmed
yeah,
physically in my seat because it was just like you felt it. Uh, Really eerie. And but it completely bifurcates his forearm.
right. And it cuts the hand right down there.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so now he's free. She hears the noise, she runs in the house, and it's the mask that the teenager was wearing, and it's the teenager, and he's saying shit that the teenager would say. But his arm is cut in two, and so now you're like, oh, it was the teenager the whole time. No, it wasn't the teenager the whole time. This is all essentially the Green Man, right? Um, So I don't exactly remember how the fight or the altercation with the teenager goes, but eventually it's the vicar, um, and the vicar has the same wound, the same arm cut in two. So now it was the Green Man, then it was the teenager, now it's the vicar, and the vicar, and this is kind of the showdown here, where he says like all of these disgusting things about how he knew that she was like the essence of carnality. Of how he hasn't been able to stop thinking about when she lost her virginity since he saw her.
Yeah.
Uh, um, and it's weird the things that the character says, because he's not assaulting her. He's getting a little gross, right? Like he puts like his split arm on her here, and like it's kind of wrapped around here, not really wrapped around here, but it's here, and she'll have this like blood stain there the rest of the movie. And he gets close, and he definitely presses himself against her, but she just stabs him right in the stomach. Like she's got the knife the whole time, and she's kind of just listening and kind of like, what the fuck is going on?
I think I
And
will state that this is an assault.
yeah, yeah, obviously. Um, but they're not fighting. He's not hitting her. Like this isn't like an action-packed scene.
No, it's
He is,
slow, but he is pinning her against the
yeah,
vanity, and it seems like he is about to enter her. It seems like his goal is to enter her.
right. Um, but she stabs him. She denies him, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
she penetrates him.
she penetrates him with
Yes.
a knife, which backs him off, and then some really rad shit happens. And apparently, okay, so we'll pause here for a moment to just to say that the internet exploded with A24's new movie has people walking out in the middle of it. Like I must have read that headline 100 times.
Right.
Um, First of all, this is literally 10 minutes before the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So middle of the movie, I don't think so.
I
Uh,
mean, they're not wrong technically if it's not the very beginning or very end, the middle. And I think that they're kind of using some license there to describe it that, and
well,
just
just
to
say the end. Just say the end of the
help
movie has people. Well,
nah, because yeah, because
people
then
leave at the end anyway. I don't know.
like, oh yeah, that's when everyone leaves in the movie. I leave when I don't leave whenever when
Well,
it's
I'll tell
done.
you, this headline had me going like, "Oh, we're about 45 minutes in. Where's that fucked up shit?" And
Uh,
I didn't get it till minute 80. Okay.
right.
um. So the dying green man who has taken a few forms this evening and attempted um to create a birth within our main character, now kind of right strips himself of his clothes, and under his cock and balls is a vagina, and he births another Rory Kinnear, which has a vagina that births another Rory Kinnear, and she's just watching. She's got the knife. She's not killing any of these.
Right.
But the seems like the old ones aren't alive anymore. They seem to like deflate into like flesh piles. Only the new ones are seemingly even living.
Right. Yeah. Once it births, it's no longer there or embodied
Yeah.
physically. It dies in the act. So yeah, the green man births the boy, who then births the vicar, um,
Who
who
then
then
births
births Jeffrey,
Jeffrey?
who
Because I
then
had that
births
weird teeth.
the finally through its mouth births James, her
Right.
ex-husband.
Her ex-husband. Who then they have a they have the final conversation, which I already touched on, where she asks him what he wanted from her, and he says to love me, which is the final time a man imposes his emotions on her, where it's her fault for not loving him. He needs her to love him. Um, it cuts away here.
Hmm.
I think we assume because she's got the axe,
Right.
which was the smoking axe because it was referred to earlier by the friend. Uh, we didn't get to see her use it, but we assume that that he takes the axe here. I think,
Hmm.
um, and then a nice little ending shot of the friend finally gets there, and it's silent. And she walks through. She sees the crashed car, um, which was Jeffrey, which was so weird, right? Because
Hmm.
like, so she did get attacked by all the versions of the Green Man at the end, right? Um, she turns the corner and she's sitting on the stairs outside, and she sees and the friend is pregnant, and she smiles. And I think that's important too. And then we cut to credits.
Yeah.
Um, so how did you interpret the ending?
Um. So I suppose when I first saw it, and I'm leaving the theater and sitting with it, I continually was just like, okay, so what was the reality, or what was the character? Because you just now were describing it as the Green Man doing this, the Green Man doing that, and it's like, well, there's something to that, um, but these are the characters that are doing this, but they are showing up at awkward times, and then there are actual life and death type interactions or moments that are occurring with each of them, and so like but then there's the hallucinatory potential with the dandelion spores that the character blows into her that could then become this acid trip type effect that she's experiencing. And so, um, in short, all of those acts are occurring to me, um, whether they're the actual physical embodiment of that character or a manifestation of that character that she is then seeing as that entity, and she's interpreting it as the boy, the vicar, the whatever,
Mm,
um, whatever it is. That's how she's experiencing it, and but all those actions are occurring because the chaos that you see with the friend, the fact that the car is still there, you see the blood trail of all the
yeah,
events that have occurred.
it all happened.
It's
Yeah,
it all happened, and so the final scene, the friend being pregnant, I think is important. She very well could be inseminated in some kind of way. Maybe that did happen. There's all kinds of imagery that alludes to that with the dandelion spore. His seed has entered her, and maybe she's actually pregnant with James's baby, and a lot of these emotions and things that she's working through are happening in part because of that and what that is doing with your mind, and that is just adding another layer to how she's reeling from the events that occurred with James. um and maybe that's like, why is the friend pregnant? The friend doesn't need to be pregnant. And
she
so like,
so she does need to be pregnant. But go on, for my
well,
interpretation.
no, but that's what I'm saying. Like, for Alex Garland, the friend doesn't need to be pregnant. Like, this character doesn't have to be pregnant. It's an intentional act to kind of help explain or inform how to interpret. And so I think it helps guide you to thinking in that vein. And she has that assured smile that, like, she's battled the demons and she's come out on the other side, better equipped to navigate her own future, her own path. Um, and she's gotten over the trauma to some extent of what James has put her through. This retreat did achieve what she wanted it to, although not the way that she had intended it on occurring.
Yeah, I agree. She definitely got closure by the end. Um, I definitely think it was from getting to kill the Green Man in James's visage
Hmm.
there, right?
Hmm.
Um, so for me, they're definitely all the same character. They're definitely all the Green Man. That explains the face, right? Um, that also explains why the teenager and the vicar both have the arm uh, wound because he changed form, but he couldn't heal the wound, right? So this is where
Right.
this is where
But
it's go ahead.
that visual is also the only reason that visual exists is because of the husband, because that's what happened to the husband. The
the
husband is impaled on the Iron Maiden at the bottom of the
and it slit the arm open,
and it slits the arm open, and his
right?
leg is bent to
It's
scale.
bent to
So they're embodying how she last saw the husband.
right. Okay, yeah, and maybe that is why. Okay, so the Green Man needs her to procreate according to nature, but she refuses him. And what we see at the end, those multiple births, is is man. If man had to self-replicate, right? If we didn't have women, um, we would just make the same thing over and over and over again. We would just recreate ourselves.
Yeah, well, and it's just generational toxicity that continues to go on. You're just a version of yourself, of yourself.
Right.
It's cyclical.
And then the smile at the end uh, is the the woman pregnant, the balance, right? Like she just came out of this horrific experience with the four births of the Green Man. Obviously, she does get her closure, so I think there's some of that in there. But also, I think it is just the sight of her friend,
Hmm.
who is pregnant, is what brings the smile to her face. Um, so yeah, I mean, I love this movie. I can't wait to watch it again.
Yeah,
I'm giving it a solid 8 out of 10.
I think that's where I rested. Let me just double check. Yeah, I gave it an 8.
Yeah, A24 does it again. Alex Garland does it again.
Yeah.
I love Ex Machina. I know so many people who hate it. Sorry, Alex Garland.
Oh, do
um,
you?
oh my God. I think almost everyone I know who's seen it doesn't like it.
Really? Why?
Yeah, they honestly they always say the ending. The ending, they just didn't like the ending. I think the ending was great.
Yes, it's very good.
Yeah, he never should have trusted the robot. Like
Right.
that's the moral of the story. Don't trust the
Yeah.
robot. Like anyway though, excellent work. Everyone involved. Rory Kinnear fucking killed it. All those different roles. I forgot who played. Um, I can't even remember her name.
Harper was played by
Harper.
Jesse Buckley.
Jessie Buckley. Yeah, she was fantastic.
Yeah,
Just a
Men
just
has a 39% audience score on the old Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. Well, it's because they couldn't handle the vagina.
Yeah, I know.
Y-
The body horror that it turns into
Yeah,
is very off-putting for a lot of people. If you're not used to seeing it, or I don't know. I mean,
it looked amazing. I don't know what people were talking like.
oh, it's cool as shit. It's psychological. It's like, it. And I think people are upset or annoyed, like, I don't need to see it a million times. Like, you don't have to do it. Okay, I got it the first time. Like,
Well, the third
it,
time it
it-
came out of his back, and
I know.
the fourth time it came out of his mouth. So shut the fuck up.
Right, but there's also like, the act of birth, the horrors of of it and what it's doing. Like, just because it comes where how birthing a baby occurs uh is is a miracle, but it is graphically absurd. And so I think that showing it occur in all these other ways through the body is meant to heighten the insanity of what the female body is capable of.
Oh yeah,
Because and like it's just like it's an exaggeration of it. So I think yes, seeing it in all these different iterations is helping to drive that point home, that theme, to give better awareness or understanding. And it's just done in this grotesque, absurd way. It's
yeah.
those are all great informative,
It's
intentional decisions. That's
it's
so
also
what
it's also nature. It also happens a million times a day.
right.
If you're not going to give birth yourself, you're going to be the father probably at least once in your lifetime statistically.
Hmm.
This is just a thing that people shouldn't be squirmy about because it's real life. Okay, yeah, it's absurd in a movie. It's a hermaphroditic idol that's that's performing these these births of his own self.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's like really crazy and weird, but like the the actual practical effects of it, um, I mean, it just looked incredible.
Yeah.
Uh, and I mean, it's a penis and a vagina. Like, get over it. How much fucking porn do you watch? You
Hmm.
can't handle some cock and balls in your horror. Like, I thought it was amazing that it was in there. When like, okay, so
Right.
the homeless guy's got a swinging dick through the whole movie, whatever. When it gives birth to the first version,
Yeah.
and it's really close in on the vagina, and you've just got this like gravity's putting it where it's supposed to go. It's like it's laying there the way it would lay there if you were laying on your back,
Right.
and it's just there. It's just dick and balls, and you're like, and I'm like, wow, they left that there. They didn't
Right.
like drop the camera down an inch so you didn't see it.
Right.
Like, it's all there. I mean, literally kudos to everyone involved for everything they did in this movie. Uh, People who walked out of there should be made to watch it again for being big babies about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, it's maybe a little bit childish, that people were acting like I don't know, I mean, there are worse, more offensive things that assault your eyes every day. This just happens to be, yeah, for this
No,
to be the
exactly.
thing that makes you turn away is shocking.
Yeah, like there's more graphic pornography on the internet that people are watching right now than what happened at the end of that movie. And if you're walking out on that, like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of person are you? So anyway, Mad God got a 7 from me. Got a 9 from this guy over here.
Yeah. And then, yeah, men, we both landed at an 8.
Super solid. We have no idea what we're gonna watch next week, so don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you get on that Twitter so you can find out ahead of time what we're gonna talk about. Maybe watch them with us and uh, talk about them or watch the show live so you've seen the movies first, that kind of thing. Didn't really know what I was trying to say there. For episode 24 of the podcast for the recently deceased, I'm Nate Roberts,
And I'm Rodney Godek. Take care.
and we'll see you next week.